I am going to sew together 5 2.5-inch squares and then sew those squares to a 10.5-inch wide piece of fabric. I'm going to repeat it, and I'm going to do one with a 1/4-inch seam allowance and one with a scant 1/4-inch seam allowance to demonstrate the benefit. I am measuring exactly a 1/4 inch from my needle and putting a piece of tape down for an accurate seam allowance, and then I sew my 5 squares together, guiding it along the edge of that tape to get an accurate 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can see here that I am coming up a little bit shy on that big piece. For the scant 1/4 inch piece, I am putting my tape just slightly in from the other 1/4 inch seam allowance tape and then sewing everything up, and it looks like we might be good to go. With the 1/4 inch seam allowance, my 10.5-inch piece of fabric was a little bit longer than the squares that should also measure 10.5 inches. With the scant 1/4 inch seam, we have perfection. The reason is that the fold of the fabric and the thread take up space, so a 1/4 inch seam allowance doesn't always work. For blocks like the It's All Gonna Be Okay quilt or the Penguin Social quilt, you really need to pay attention to your scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. It's not always necessary, but sometimes it is.